within co-creating who you are becoming. Michele provides holistic coaching designed to accelerate and support personal transformation. That's terrific. And also in supporting our shift to higher consciousness through intuitive mind, body, spirit connection. So it is our great pleasure to welcome Michele Ray. Take it away.
Thank you, Don.
Have fun.
Thanks. Thank you for that warm introduction from Don and Ella and Gary and Riley. When I got here, and fun to meet and say hello to most of you. I am Michele Ray, and I'm sort of on fire about the opportunity humanity has right now for a rapid, accelerated, transformative time in our life. I kind of think of it like a birthquake. It's a very messy, have you noticed? Yeah? But we have an opportunity to slide into the fear and complacency and shut down and contract, or open up and expand and get creative and intuitive and connect with other like-minded beings and let love, our heart, our mind, body, spirit connection, co-create who we are becoming, as the tagline on my book says. And it impacts every single aspect of our being. So this new era, that I call it, is a time to consider any conditioning and programming you have assimilated as truth that's bullshit, okay? And we have that meter in us, right? Ooh, that doesn't feel so good, constricting, or expanding, higher, everybody counts, versus this group of like-minded people count, right? That's an example. So it requires us to consider the fact that at the end of our lifetime, we could love more, live more fully, and live in our mastery at a level that will surprise us, like every day. Wow, I wonder what miracle and mystery is going to unfold today. Transforming our triggers is a big part of that. And that's our topic for the month here. Gary made that up for us to all have as a focal point, because we're all triggered, right? We get triggered. And we want to talk about that and how that can enhance our wisdom, expedite our healing, teach us how we are interconnected. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. This is a page out of the book that Don was talking about. I have some copies outside if you're interested when we're finished. But this is an attempt to say we've been operating, our operating system has been in this old era. And I believe that we, on the planet, every single living thing on the planet, including human beings, are being up-leveled in our hardware. Anybody that studies DNA, the electromagnetic field of the planet, it's changing rapidly right now. And we are also have an opportunity for an upgrade in our software. So these are some of my attempts of words of the new era. So think about in your own life what you're ready to release. As Don said, where's your growing edge? Where do you go default when we get on amygdala hijack, protect and defend? And what do we want this planet, humanity, what do we want our operating system to be? Okay? We get to decide. We are literally co-creating who we are becoming. So that's a piece from that book. So how do we transform our triggers? They're natural. We want to pay attention to them as information. This is from a friend of mine who's given me permission to use this, Jean. So how many of you know about emotional, social, conversational intelligence? Some of those things, yep. So in a few minutes, you're going to be asked to find one or two other people, groups of 2 or 3, to talk about some of these subjects. So those of you introverts who are dreading the fact that I just said that, I'm giving you a minute to adjust to that possibility. But the model is transformation of any kind, including our triggers, starts from inside. It requires mindfulness, which means the capacity to witness, the capacity to be in the present moment with what is, with a minimal amount of judgment and story and meaning. And from that self-awareness, we notice our emotional awareness, and then we can actually have a choice. For me, in my own coaching work, working with people, when we have the ability to be triggered, have a full-on body reaction, right? Have it touch every memory of every time anyone on the whole planet has ever dismissed us, back to our kindergarten teacher, right? And that person who barely said any little dismissive thing that may or may not have been dismissive, but right? We have the ability to feel that all the way through, emotionally, mentally, even examine all the stories of the times we've been dismissed in my example, and have a pause and be able to respond without it being driven by our need to protect and defend, or be right, or be amygdala hijacked, right? And then we can move into social awareness, empathy, right? How do we work with other people in organizations, volunteer? How about our relationships? When you master transforming your triggers, every relationship you have up levels. It's super powerful to have one person be triggered and have you be able to take a breath, speak your truth, mind you. Nobody steps on your toes, mind you, but you don't need to take a sledgehammer to them or impose your rightness on their rightness, right? And they can, through mirror neurons, match you instead of you match their overreactive triggers. So Jonathan Goleman is the sound guy. Daniel Goleman is the emotional intelligence guy. So just paying attention. So the invitation, takeaway 1, is how do you pay attention? What happens in your body when you get triggered? Your mind. What stories do you tell yourself? What emotions come up? What behaviors come up? How does this show up at work? Right? What's our culture? So what happens in the brain? I am also a pharmacist by first training, and I still practice a little bit. So I'm sort of a neuroscience geek, as well as an intuitive empath. So I've spent my entire life studying about why my body feels so different at the Mall of America than it does walking around Lake of the Isles, right? And the science of it, the mind-body connection. Information comes into our central limbic system. It goes through our memory bank, and the information is safe or not safe. If it's not safe, it goes to our hindbrain, where we get triggered to defend ourselves, to protect ourselves, to be in fight and flight. If it goes through our memory banks and it's lovely, we have full access to our prefrontal cortex, our executive functioning, our ability to notice subtle energy, right? All the things. Think of smoke, a fire, outside on a campfire. If your memory bank says, I was in a house fire when I was 7, and every time I smell that, it means danger, right? Or, my favorite place ever was my grandma and grandpa's cabin in Brainerd, and that smell immediately brings me back to loveliness. The smell of a campfire is neutral. Where it triggers us is our work. So first we notice. And the cool thing is, it's such a super great thing being triggered. We want to notice. Thank you that the car is running down the street, that I'm talking to my friend and I didn't notice and I heard it and I'm all of a sudden, and I saved myself, right? So it's a natural process. We want to encourage the triggers. We want it as neutral of information as possible. and then make choices from there. So self-regulation, self-management, it's an inner skill that we can develop to assist us when we get triggered. Functioning on the planet as a human being, if you are not triggered, you have access, again, to your prefrontal cortex. They call it executive functioning. And if you don't, you're more errors, more stress, can't make a decision, right? Our frontal cortex, where our higher thinking, shuts down because if you're running from a burning house, staying with my analogy, you don't want to be thinking about the meaning of life and connecting with your guides, right? And your most intuitive dream interpretation. You want to get the heck out of there. But every day, constantly on high arousal, not so much. So I'm going to ask you in a minute how you manage your triggers, okay? But here's a couple of ideas. Breath. Our breath is free. It rewires our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system and brings us back to homeostasis and autonomic nervous system balance, for those of you non-science geeks, right? Free with you 24/7. Breathing in for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, breathing out for 4 counts, and holding for 4 counts within 30 seconds changes the chemical balance in your body. Words. How many of you journal? Talk to somebody when you get stressed out, right? Professionally or have your friend. Body awareness. While I'm talking about this and we're talking about self-awareness and the cues in your physical body, when you are stressed and you don't know them, have a talk with yourself. Do you bite your nails? Do you clench your jaw? Do you get a stomachache? Right? Body awareness, super important. Movement can also change the entire chemical structure and nervous system in 60 seconds. Just stretch. Go out in nature. And this witness, my personal favorite, if I can find 1/10 of myself to watch myself having a huge reaction, I have a chance. Think of the witness as a mirror. It just sees clearly what's happening. It has no opinion. It's a really good way to practice self-awareness. So this is your time. Thank you for all adjusting to the fact that you have to talk to someone in case you weren't planning on it. So find one other person and answer these 2 questions. It'll take a few minutes, not a real long time. We have one other breakout, little chat we want to do too. So I'll give you more information. We'll do a second one. But see what you have to share. Share your wisdom, and then we'll ask if anyone has anything afterwards. And if you can, find somebody you don't know very well, because you can talk to your friend that you came with later. That's just my invitation. And you can also refuse. Of course, this is a free will zone. take another minute or so to wrap up.
I wish I got there the easy way.
I'm going to ask if people want to share, so if you're ready for. All right, we'll come back to our central focus here. Don has a microphone. Anyone want to share any insights with our group? If you're all talked out, that's good, but Ella has something good.
Say otherwise, we'll have to pick volunteers. You, sir.
I recognize that I don't tune in to what my triggers and stress response is until way after it's happened. And so, but my favorite technique to respond once it's happened is to do some journaling about it, try to put it into perspective.
Thank you. And I think that Ella's suggestion is really great. The mastery of this is to be able to do it in the moment. That's how you know, right, you were working towards, and depending, some triggers we can, and others it's like, whew, my yoga mat, my walk in the woods, talk to my dog, journal, and then come back around. Thank you. Anyone else?
Aloha. Beautiful meaning behind that word. So much more than hi or hello. I invite triggers. I love them because it represents an unhealed place within me where the energy gets stuck, and I instantly notice I start to contract. And so then I just go and investigate what's the root cause of that. Is it inner child wounding, some type of trauma, false narrative about myself? And then because I recognized it, immediately I can let it go and move forward without being triggered for more than a few seconds. So bring it on. I always say I like to jump in the deep end.
Thank you for the wisdom. It is true that it is our own shadow, the own unhealed place in us that gets triggered. Think of it like people throwing salt on a wound at you. And if you don't have a wound, it's just salt, and it stays with them. And we can be compassionate. We're going to talk again, we're going to move on and talk about a couple more techniques that we can use. But if we can look at this as our spiritual practice, getting triggered, it completely transforms and brings us back inside versus that person needs to stop triggering me so I feel better. The invitation is it's an inside job. And to your point, to all of our points, it does move into that social, right, IQ as well. So we really want to master this so we can be a leader in our communities, allow the liminal space, that space in between where we don't know, and we can become comfortable with it. Honor the pause, embrace the journey of growth, and be in community. Super important. And as we develop our intelligences to transform our triggers, we also really want to cultivate cultural awareness. And that is only possible when I can sit and be open and listen and hear your experience and say, maybe to myself, that is so different than my experience. Rather than, you must be lying because it doesn't match my experience, right? There's conversation about Jesus' teaching about do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. And another level up from that teaching is, I want to learn how I can support you call out your genius, encourage you, and it might be different than me. Do you see? Layers and layers of higher consciousness. Conversations. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I did a whole talk on it a year and a half ago, so if you're curious, you can go back and listen to this talk on the Lake Harriet Spiritual Center YouTube channel. It was very fun for me to spend the whole time talking about this, but every single conversation you engage in either expands you or contracts you. So think of that when you meet somebody. Are you inviting them in? Or are you activating their fear network or their trust network? Right? Same thing. Where in the central nervous system in the brain are you talking about excluding and judging and limiting and othering and being right and being divisive and polarizing? I know none of us see any of that in our world. Or are we the ones that make the choice to include, appreciate, expand? Do we activate someone's fight or flight and their survival instinct, or are we cultivating in our conversations trust, empathy, strategic thinking, intuition, and flourishing, thriving? My preference. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. So if you're interested in this, conversational intelligence is a very worthy pursuit. And speaking to first understand someone versus being understood comes out of Stephen Covey's work, which is in the Mormon tradition. I don't know if they call it Latter-day Saints. I'm not the most politically correct person about remembering things. But the fact that it's in every single sacred tradition and in the popular press, culture, organizations, think about adopting it. I have a whole chapter in my book on the impact of higher consciousness and new era thinking and loving and serving and speaking, conversing in my book, and the impact it has. I talk about this so often that if you come see me as a coach and you want to talk further, I actually have made these business cards with just this stuff on it. And if you're interested in some, you can sign up for my newsletter, ask me for cards, and I'll send you some. One of my favorite things, anyway, I did a whole 6-month organizational development piece at a company that makes pipes. And, they're a rough and tumble kind of guys, mostly guys. And when I came back after this talk and they all half of them asked me for more of these cards, I was really impressed. Like, I need to give one to my sister and my wife. So it's time, right? We're being called. My why of why I bother working hard on noticing my triggers and transforming them with my own healing is I really like being able to be quiet enough to feel the subtle energies, the intuition, right? To feel into all those levels of being human, my higher self, the Holy Spirit, both HSs, I just call them all HS, I think they're all the same thing. My soul, right? The angels, all of it. So one of the things I am doing is I have committed to creating a legacy course that starts in April for 6 months, a mastery course that's designed to go through the process of transformation, tools, readings, research, experiential, and it's been really cool with 2 other women to develop that. So that feeds my soul. That's my why. Why bother with the transforming my triggers? To be able to be in community, in the world, with like-minded people saying, I want to do this differently. I want to live and love and serve in the new era qualities. We do a whole section on the clairs. If any of you, I'll offer that also. I have a really cool handout on clairs with kind of a testing thing. How do we pay attention to the subtle ways of knowing? I have a new client that just started in January, and she's just a hoot. So she's like, I don't know anything about this, but I've been told I'm a, gifted spiritual And then she tells me 20 stories, right, about her grandma died and the smell of the rose came. It's just been really fun for me to write all of them down and read them back to her. And she's like, oh my. But we have to notice, even at this level, the mystics of every tradition continue to invite us to that center within, right? Even to be outside of time and space in our perspective, right? And to own all of our multidimensional self, including full unity consciousness with Source. Once you know that level of higher consciousness, you can never unknow it. And it only comes if you have enough free attention and awareness to experience the subtle relationship, the subtle sensation of being human in that way. And there's several chapters in my book on that as well, if you're interested. So here's what I see. I see that change happens, spiral dynamics, we all know about that, right? And we're on the whip. We're on the evolutionary whip. And it's disorientating, confusing. Find each other, practice our skills. And I'm going to ask you to think about making a commitment to yourself with one other person. I'm going to see if I can talk you into talking to a different person this time, maybe someone else you don't know. But these are just some, ideas on how do we practice living in the new era and transforming transforming our triggers. My niece and nephew come and do Auntie Michele sleepovers, and we have these leather-bound books, and we have 5 things we write every time they come. Something that scares me, that's what I'm thinking about, right? An act of kindness, something I did that was, I can't remember what they all are, a cool thing. So just, again, how do we want to do this? How do we want to live this way? What are your intentions for fully embracing the energy of this new era? And for those of you listening to it later or now, take some time. We're going to do it live here. What is your why to transform your triggers and live your most authentic, empowered life? That's our birthright, is to live into our genius, to fully blossom and give our gifts. Just like an acorn, right? Just like a rose. And so, and if you're interested, think of a time that you've had access to this non-local, intuitive, synchronistic, transformative, and cultivate those. What we focus on grows. So sometimes just taking a few minutes to share a story, it's like, yeah, that is me. Kind of like my client, right? I do have that. It happens regularly. Sometimes I don't notice. So I'm going to, again, invite you to take a few minutes, find a person, maybe someone different, and just share a few stories about this. So take another minute or so to wrap up. So anyone have anything they want to share, any insight we want to capture here on our recording and for our larger audience? So are these things you think about often? No, Ella says no.
Do I have to pick a volunteer?
We have a volunteer.
Angie, are you thinking of what you're going to say to everybody?
Go back to the question.
I have two things to mention. One is I am a reader, regularly, what do you call a future reader? What do you call that? I forget. But anyway, a card reader. So obviously I get that all the time. And the funny thing is this, I get the card reader if I'm doing it for somebody else. I can't do it for myself. So, which is interesting. You know, God is saying, if you're in service, yes, I will help you. But otherwise, forget it. So that's one thing. The other thing is this. My partner and I were seated in the front room of our house, and neither one of our neighbors or none of our neighbors have flowers in the garden or had flowers in the garden at that time. And all of a sudden we're sitting there and there's this wonderful smell coming out of we don't know where. And all of a sudden we realized that that had to do with Krishna. Because we had been talking about Krishna or something like that. So Krishna, it's almost like Krishna said, yeah, I'm here. You know, I exist. So there was no reason for that kind of smell. And by the way, it wasn't a common smell at all. It wasn't something that you could just produce out of whatever. Yeah. So that's definitely, what is that, clairsentience or something like that.
Small one, yeah.
So.
Very cool.
There you go.
Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
And in order to notice those things, your triggers have to be relatively calm. Yeah, Camille.
Hi. So Dave and I were talking and about the first question, why transform your triggers? And it just sort of arrived to both of us that because to do so opens up the field so that truth can be revealed.
Love it. And one of my favorite, I remember being I studied in a mystery school for about 10 years, and there was a talk on levels of truth. It like made my whole body vibrate, because it's like, this is true, and then you go deeper and more expansive, and like, oh, that's like a fraction of the truth. I'm still like the onion peeling on the truth thing, so thank you. It is very helpful for that. Yeah.
Sometimes you get a trigger because you are being protected from danger.
Absolutely.
Walk away from that person or walk away from that situation.
It's information, and if you can take it in and not be overwhelmed, right, then you can make the best decision. Walk away, set it down, come back with a conversation that says, did you really mean that? And they're like, uh-huh. And you're like, I think our relationship's changing, right? I might shift in a job. So absolutely, it's all great information. So thank you for pointing that out. We'll take one more comment, and then we'll wrap up.
My why behind transforming my triggers is I want to live in peace and love.
Amen, huh?
And I want to share that with others. So I've had a lot of triggers, and just identifying them, taking responsibility for them, seeing them for what they are, and then choosing to heal them, it just brings so much peace. And I just float through my day that way, and I don't want to live any other way.
Perfect. Outer peace begins with inner peace. It is an actual alchemical way it works. So thank you for that invitation during a time on our planet where we are not so peaceful. And I suspect in the next few months, getting less peaceful. And the world needs us to live at higher consciousness, be more skilled, emotional, social, conversational, spiritual intelligence, and people can attune literally to our frequency of peace, which I really appreciate. How many of you in this room have had somebody walk up to you and say something like, "Tell me how you live this way. Why aren't you not sleeping at night? Why aren't you always going from job to job or thinking the problem's out there? Tell me your secret. Tell me something." Right? Most heads are nodding. We are leaders, we are serving, we are loving and living. And the invitation is to continue to blossom, expand levels of truth, recognize our triggers. I had a spiritual teacher Jan Adams, some of you may know that are old like me, a physician in town, and she said, information comes as a whisper, and then a tap on the shoulder, and then a slug in the arm, and then a 2x4. Catch it at the whisper, right? Thank you all for sharing your wisdom today, and we are going to do a little closing ceremony before everyone heads out, and I think I'm turning it back to Don. Thank you.
Thank you, Michele. That was so insightful, wasn't it? Did everybody appreciate that today? Does everybody have a little something they're taking out? Yeah, that's great. Yeah, another round for, thank you. And all of us want to thank you as well, for coming and taking of your time and being here for us today, for us to be inspired and moved a little bit down our path of transformation. So thank you very much. We are a volunteer organization. We don't have any funding other than the generous hearts and gifts of the people who attend here. So now is an opportunity, while Gary always plays some really neat music, to have the offering plate passed around. And if you've got a few bucks to throw in the tip jar, that would be much appreciated.
See my refrigerator, it's got a collage on it. It's covered up with cards and photographs from top to bottom. Wedding days and funerals, vacations on the beach. Stuff goes up and stuff goes down, it's different every week. 'Cause it's a work in progress. Changes all the time, part of the design, a work in progress. It's just what it is, nothing more, nothing less, just a work in progress. I wish I had a periscope so you could see into this heart of mine. You would see that it's been overhauled once or twice. Now the edges aren't so sharp, a little softer to the touch. Yeah, I've been trying not to take myself so serious, 'cause it's a work in progress. Changes all the time, part of the design, a work in progress. It's just what it is, nothing more, nothing less, just a work in progress. Oh, stroke by stroke, we paint these lines in greens and blues. We laugh, we cry in shades of gray. Each morning comes, a painter's work is never done. Yeah. see. A crazy driver nearly ran me down, but then an old man, he smiled at me. I stopped for coffee in the Daily News just to see what was going on. And in spite of all the bad news, this old planet spins along, 'cause it's a work in progress. Changes all
Okay,
the
if
time.
you guys want to come forward. Thank you so much for your gifts. If you're listening online, you can pay through a PayPal link online at LakeHarrietSpiritualCommunity.org. We also have a Venmo card up here that you can give that way electronically. So if you please raise your hands and repeat after me. God's perfect love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I give, all that I receive, and all that I am. Aho. So just while we were talking there, Michele said a little gem. I just said, thank you so much for that opportunity to share stories with each other. And she said, information informs, but stories transform. Isn't that beautiful? So continue the stories. Continue the conversation this upcoming week. And we're going to do our closing circle now. And I just want to say as we move into that, thank you so much for being here. We're so blessed that you chose to come to Lake Harriet Spiritual Community and bless us by your presence here in our community. Maybe we'll see you sometime this week, maybe next Sunday even. So for now, if we could just gather around in a circle, come to Gary and join hands, and Michele will take us home.
Oh, fantastic. So imagine the energy of your heart opening to receive this universal intelligence today to assist as we commit to our own transformation, transforming our triggers and living in the new era. Imagine someone you're very grateful for. Heart math scientifically teaches us that it brings our body and mind into coherence. So imagine that person in your heart space and allow the flow of that energy to be shared with the person on your left, and receive that energy of gratitude and appreciation from the person on your right. And feel the energy, heart to heart, going around this circle. In addition, feel Mother Earth, the energy coming up through the base of your spine and your feet, inviting her beautiful song, frequency, vibration to support us, rising up and out the top of our head and around our bodies. And that of Source, pure light and love, flowing in through the top of our head, through the bottom of our feet. We're like an acupuncture needle for the planet, receiving and giving in the flow, in community. We are so gifted today by the wisdom and energy and positive, unconditional positive regard of everyone in this circle. So let's take 3 breaths in and out together. Take a deep breath in and out, just integrating and embodying this energy. Another breath in and out. And one final breath in and out. Squeeze the hand of your partners, hands to the chest. Namaste. Blessings to everyone. Yeah.